Children of poly relationships. What was it like growing up? When I was young, my folks dated a couple of couples. One was very long-term. We were military families, but they managed to finagle a transfer together. So wow. That would have been like 8 years at least. They kept in close romantic contact when they separated. But IDK if they qualify that as still being together. They were my aunt and uncle. Essentially. We and their kiddos got sent off to grandparents. Theirs and ours. Together to give them alone time. It was kinda a given that we'd all see each other every couple days. Either they'd come to our house or we'd go to theirs. Not for them to sneak away for sexy time. But just to spend time together and be a family together. I knew I could go to them about anything, I could talk to my folks about, and even some things I couldn't. That closeness continued even when my own folks split. IDK what standing they had with them after that though. Unfortunately. My aunt kinda had a psychotic menopause and we had to go NC with her. Nobody knows that I'm still in contact with uncle though. IDK how my mom would feel about it. But he stayed a rock for me when my own dad didn't. Same drama as any other family I guess. Just more players on the stage. When I was younger I didn't realize mom and dad were poly. But now it's funny to see my friends' faces when I say, my mom and her wife and my dad's girlfriend and his other girlfriend and I are gonna get together for dinner tonight. It wasn't a huge deal when I was a kid. Essentially it was just like hanging out with your parents and their friends. Some of my mom's SOs had kids my age that I got along with really well. That being said, a little while ago my mom was flirting with a guy and referred to me as her mono kid. In the same tone I've heard ultra-conservative folk refer to gay kids. So our relationship is a little strained these days. Her other daughter is 12. So I'm really not certain why that comment was anywhere near necessary. Edit. I forgot to mention. While they have never had any authority over me, she refers to her SOs as my ramp parents. Because they're not quite step-parents. Which is kind of funny. Edit 2 to explain some things. Mono is short for monogamous. I am not poly. The mono kid comment was mostly hurtful because the way she said it implied it was some sort of scandal or like it was a bad thing. Obviously this is one thing that's bad. She's not a horrible parent and person overall. But disapproving of some of my life choices just because they're different from hers is not a great parent move either. No. I was not born into a monogamous relationship. So the comment really came out of left field. Ramp parents is a play on words because they're not married, so they are not my step-parent. So ramp is instead of step as in stairs. Ram parent had never even crossed my mind. But I can never unthink of it. So thanks for that. Also, thank you kind stranger for the hugs. Sorry if the original comment was confusing. English is hard. P. I have a friend who is a child of a throuple. He's a cool dude, pretty normal. He says as a young kid he would always try the "but mom said yes" thing to get what he wants, and if his dad called him out on it he'd just say it was the other mom until they all got together. For clarification, as far as I'm aware his parents are a closed unit. Perhaps that is easier for a kid to fathom and normalize than if they always had different and new partners at home or whatever. I took a class with a drive. Awesome at University of Houston, downtown for a while. He would talk about his childhood growing up in Cameroon in a family with one father and about a dozen mothers. At mealtime, the kids would run a route from one mother to the next, all grabbing a bite from each. He says he was IIRC 12 when he learned which mother gave birth to him. When he came to Houston to study, he applied at Rice University. When filling out the application, he asked for an extra page to provide the names of all his mothers. In his culture, he was considered to be the reincarnation of his grandfather. At a special ceremony every year, he would offer his grandfather's advice and answer questions on his grandfather's behalf. It was also in his authority to prescribe punishment for his father on this occasion. When Awesome came to the States, he would attend the annual ceremonies by phone. Edit, apparently. Dr. Awesome passed away last year. There's a brief tribute to him here. https www.forevermissed.com Lawrence Kai Awesome about. Hard for me to believe there isn't more about him online. Would love to have had his memoirs. I grew up in a small town and one half of the town were hippies. In the 3rd grade one of my friends couldn't go on a field trip because he returned a permission slip with the word parent or legal guardian crossed out and signed by the group representative. Of course in the 3rd grade we didn't know what was going on until my mom explained it to me. But when the kid was told he couldn't go, the whole hippie commune came over to class explaining to the teacher how all their kids will be raised by the group and it's damaging if they see a single person as their parent or guardian. I had a therapist in a poly relationship and they all three had a child together that was around 9 when I met them. 2 dads and 1 mom. Unfortunately, they couldn't be fully open about the fact that the 3 of them were in love since before she was born, because the one she called dad worked for a religious college and that information getting out at all could have cost him his career. So she only called 2 of them mom and dad while she thought of the other like an uncle that visited every day. She seemed normal. She liked to make slime. My parents were poly since well before they got married and I was born. Mostly it was just boyfriends or girlfriends that would visit. I didn't know anything about sex. They didn't tell me anything inappropriate. Although they did make sure that I wouldn't gab about who slept in what bed when I was young. They were dead scared of child services getting involved. One of my mom's boyfriends became a lot more serious and he moved in when I was about 8 or 9. It was a lot like having an uncle move in. He became part of the family. Drove me and my brother to places. Got involved in our interests. I told people he was my uncle. He had another girlfriend aside from my mother. Too. Openly. He broke up with my mother in a big way. Which they kept private from me. And moved out when I was maybe 14 or so. It might have been hard for my mother. But it wasn't traumatic for me. We kept in touch for a few years until he moved farther away for a new job. It wasn't like a divorce experience. More like my uncle moving out. My dad had a serious girlfriend too. But she was also married with a kid my age, so she never moved in with us, but we went and visited as a family a few times a year. She's great friends with my mom to this day. Her kid and I were good friends for a while and drifted apart as we got older. A lot like cousins. Also I had my aunt, who had no sexual or familial relationship with either of my parents. She was just so close a friend that she was practically family and she'd take me for a lot of weekends and summers. I thought she was legit my mother's sister until I was 8. Also there were other friends that would move in while they got back on their feet. And I have no idea if sexual or romantic relationships were involved. We treated them like family guests. So basically we were a normal nuclear family with normal kinds of family relationships that just weren't conditioned by blood ties. Edit. I think my parents were kinda neglectful and self-centered. But not in a big way. And possibly not related to having multiple partners. I think it's just who they are as people. This will probably be buried, but it happened to my husband who didn't even realize it was happening. When he was a kid, his father lived with his mothers. One of whom he thought was his birth mother and the other was an identical twin to her that he just called his aunt. He said it felt pretty normal. He never knew it was poly until much later in his life. Several years back, his mother had passed away and his aunt contacted him again asking if she could move in with him to have him help her as her caregiver. He agreed. And just before her passing he received a letter from her lawyer, written by the twins and his father. Finally explaining everything. Turned out his aunt was his actual birth mother who had kids with his father too before he was born but who had passed away in a house fire. The mother that raised him was completely sterile and in fact had a hysterectomy at a very young age. He was in complete shock. But said it made sense how close everyone was in the house. Despite keeping all the adult stuff behind closed doors. His big shock seemed more the fact that his father kept up 2 relationships instead of just 1. And he was either scared, impressed, or both. It was fine. The poly part didn't really become known to me till I was 13 or so. The only weird bit was if I was bringing home a friend or someone I wanted to go out with, I had to kind of explain what to expect beforehand and some people got weirded out. I'm an adult in a monogamous marriage now. I saw firsthand that getting 3 people to come to a consensus on anything was exponentially more difficult than just getting 2 on the same page. Edit. I just realized too, how I was raised also made me very comfortable with taking about sex and boundaries in a relationship. Where I think a lot of me peers were more easily pressured into things they weren't comfortable with. Hey, it's a post for me. Honestly I think it's way more boring than most people would think. Most of the time. My mom wouldn't introduce a partner to me unless it was a long-term relationship. So most of the time I got the single mom experience. I think the most exciting thing was going out for dinner to meet someone new. And occasionally my mom would date someone who had a kid my age. And we would awkwardly play together while our parents were on a date. As in, we were playing in my room upstairs and a movie date or SMTHN was going on in the living room downstairs. Really, for the most part it was so completely average, other than knowing my mom had 2 girlfriends and eventually I also got a stepdad. The worst part was around 6 to 8th grade when kids found out and started bullying me for it. Asking all kinds of disgusting sexual questions about my parents. No one wants to think about their parents having sex. Eventually I learned to just not tell anyone unless we were close and I knew they were cool. I only ever had one person I trusted enough to actually come to a family picnic where my mom's partners would all be there. My mom's partners aren't my parents, but they are part of my life and my family. They're wonderful and supportive, and have helped me through some horrible dark spots in my life. I'm grateful to have such a wonderful, loving family. So yeah. Not very exciting, I know. But it's my life.